In 2015, the world learned a chilling truth: the richest and most powerful weren't just playing a different financial game, they were playing by entirely different rules. When an anonymous whistleblower leaked over 11.5 million documents from the Panamanian law firm 𝗥𝗜𝗖𝗥𝗘𝗧𝗦, the result was one of the most explosive revelations in financial history. Hidden behind shell companies and offshore accounts were the secret dealings of world leaders, criminals, and billionaires, all connected by a sophisticated global network built to shield their wealth from scrutiny. "Secrecy is power," said investigative journalist 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, one of the German reporters who first received the leaked files. Alongside his colleague 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and with the help of the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, they organized a collaborative investigation spanning over 80 countries. What they uncovered was a shadow financial system, operating parallel to legitimate economies, used to evade taxes, launder money, and hide assets behind layers of legal complexity. "This isn't about privacy," 𝗘𝗫𝗏𝗏 added. "It's about power. It's about inequality. Imagine a Russian nesting doll, where each layer hides another. That's how these offshore schemes operate. First, a shell company is created in a secrecy haven like the British Virgin Islands. Then, the ownership is masked with nominee directors or front companies. Finally, accounts are routed through multiple jurisdictions, making it nearly impossible to trace the true beneficiary. These offshore financial strategies don't just protect illicit money, they make it nearly invisible. It's not just criminals exploiting the system, it's also politicians, celebrities, and global corporations. But here's the question we all must ask: if trillions of dollars can be siphoned away into hidden vaults, what does that mean for the rest of us? For public services? For trust in democratic systems? What happens when global financial transparency becomes optional for the elite but mandatory for the rest? The Panama Papers revealed not just tax evasion but the moral bankruptcy of a system that allows wealth to escape accountability. Now is the time to pay attention. In a world increasingly shaped by unseen flows of capital, understanding how wealth is concealed is no longer optional, it's essential. Whether you're a policymaker, an entrepreneur, or a concerned citizen, your awareness is the first step toward demanding change. Shedding light on corruption is the first step to dismantling it. The abuse of secrecy is the bedrock of injustice. 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗥𝗘𝗧𝗦. Sunlight is said to be the best of disinfectants. Louis D. Brandeis. About the authors. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 are award-winning investigative journalists with Germany's 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏 Zeitung, renowned for their groundbreaking work in uncovering global financial misconduct. Their fearless reporting has played a pivotal role in exposing some of the most far-reaching financial scandals of the 21st century, earning them international acclaim as leading voices in the fight for transparency and accountability. Key Takeaway 1. The billion-dollar secrets of the Panama Papers: how the global elite hid their wealth. On an ordinary night in Munich, investigative journalist 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 received an extraordinary message. "Interested in data? I'm happy to share." What followed was the digital equivalent of a ticking bomb. An anonymous whistleblower, known only as John Doe, unloaded document after document, each one more explosive than the last. One early file pointed to Argentina's president allegedly using shell companies in Nevada to move millions. But soon, the data trail led somewhere even more puzzling: a billion-dollar offshore network linked to a classical cellist, Sergei Roldygin, a close friend of Vladimir Putin. This wasn't just a leak, it was the opening chapter in a financial exposé that would change global politics. As the documents piled up, one name kept surfacing: Mossack Fonseca, a quiet Panamanian law firm with a not-so-quiet role in the global economy. Its clients? Heads of state, billionaires, athletes, drug lords, and corporations, all leveraging an invisible financial web designed to shield assets and sidestep scrutiny. The final payload was historic: 11.5 million documents, 2.6 terabytes of data, outscaling both the Snowden leaks and WikiLeaks diplomatic cables. The scope was mind-boggling, the implications clear: the world's richest and most powerful were hiding their wealth in plain sight. To make sense of the chaos, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and his colleague 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 enlisted the help of the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, ICIJ. What ensued was a covert alliance of 400 journalists from 80 countries, a collaborative feat unheard of in media history. Together, they unspooled a spider's web of 214,000 offshore shell companies, exposing how billions were routed through tax havens to cloak identities and obscure transactions. Imagine a legal system within a legal system, one designed not for justice, but for evasion. Why does this matter to you? Because this is not just about the ultra-wealthy, it's about the trust we place in systems, the taxes we pay, and the global inequality those systems quietly uphold. If governments are losing billions in unpaid taxes while average citizens face austerity, isn't it fair to ask, who is the system really designed to serve? As George Orwell once said, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. The Panama Papers did exactly that. They pulled back the velvet curtain to reveal the shadows behind the throne. Financial transparency is not a distant policy issue, it shapes the world we live in. As you move into the next chapter of this investigation, remember, truth still matters, journalism still matters, and your awareness is a tool for accountability. Sunlight is said to be the best of disinfectants. Louis D. Brandeis. If you wanted to keep a secret, you must also hide it from yourself. George Orwell. Key takeaway 2. Inside Panama's financial black box, how the ultra-rich disappear money legally. Imagine being able to hide millions of dollars with a few clicks, no questions asked. That's the chilling reality behind offshore companies, legal entities designed to provide total anonymity for the ultra-wealthy, criminals, and corporations alike. Think of them like Russian nesting dolls, each layer masks the next, creating a near-impossible trail to follow. With a few $100s, you can purchase not just a company, but a cloak of invisibility. In a world where transparency is currency, secrecy has become a global business model. The beating heart of this shadowy system? Panama, a tiny Central American nation with outsized influence in global finance. After its strategic independence in 1903, backed by U.S. interests for control of the canal, Panama slowly morphed into a fortress of financial secrecy. The cornerstone of its offshore dominance was Law 32 of 1927, a statute still active today, which guarantees secrecy, tax sheltering, and corporate anonymity. This one law became the backbone of Panama's rise from colonial obscurity to global financial power. At the center of this financial labyrinth is 𝗦𝗘𝗏𝗧𝗏, a now notorious law firm that made hiding wealth an art form. Their tool of choice? A three-layer protection system that rivals the complexity of espionage thrillers. First, nominee directors, decoys with no real power, sign off on corporate decisions. Then come nominee shareholders, creating a further screen between the real owner and the legal entity. And finally, the crown jewel of secrecy, bearer shares, pieces of paper that represent full ownership and can be passed hand to hand like cash. No records, no names, no trace. What happens when secrecy backfires? In the 1990s, a German billionaire misplaced his bearer share certificate, instantly losing control over a yacht, properties, and a maze of offshore investments. To reclaim them, he had to beg Mossack Fonseca for a new certificate. This isn't fiction, it's the high-stakes reality of offshore tax havens, where billions hinge on a single piece of unregistered paper. Doesn't it make you wonder, how many fortunes have changed hands without a trace? Offshore finance isn't a loophole, it's a feature of the current global system. Governments like Panama's reap the rewards through tax revenue and economic growth, while maintaining laws that fuel financial secrecy. As we peel back the layers of this offshore architecture, it becomes clear, transparency isn't just a moral issue, it's a structural necessity. The greatest trick the rich ever pulled was making their wealth invisible. Secrecy is the linchpin of power. John le Carré. Key takeaway 3. How offshore shell companies help dictatorships survive, the Panama Papers truth. How do authoritarian regimes finance repression under the watch of global sanctions? The trail often begins in gleaming office towers thousands of miles away from the violence, like those of Mossack Fonseca, the Panamanian law firm at the center of the infamous Panama Papers investigation. Investigators uncovered that offshore shell companies weren't just playgrounds for tax evaders, they were lifelines for dictatorships like Syria's, helping them quietly fund war machines in defiance of international law. At the core of this web was Rami Makhlouf, cousin to President Bashar al-Assad and Syria's de facto financial overlord. From telecom giants to airline holdings, Makhlouf's reach was vast. But this empire wasn't built on business savvy alone, it was fortified by intimidation and state-backed monopolies, according to U.S. authorities. When sanctions hit in 2008, Mossack Fonseca faced a moral crossroads: uphold international law or continue enabling a violent regime. They chose the latter, and cashed in. And it didn't stop with Rami. His brothers Hafez and 𝗘𝗫𝗄, deeply entrenched in the regime's security and business apparatus, also used Mossack Fonseca to manage covert finances. Through front companies like Maxima Middle East Trading Company, The Assad regime bypassed embargoes to secure aviation fuel and oil. All of this unfolded under the firm's watch. Yet, when pressed by journalists, 𝗦𝗘𝗶𝗬𝗂 denied knowing about their clients' affiliations, despite internal compliance warnings and email trails suggesting otherwise. This begs the question, how many brutal regimes depend not just on guns, but on spreadsheets and signatures in offshore tax havens? Offshore networks don't just hide money, they enable autocracies to thrive by providing legal facades for illegal transactions. And 𝗦𝗘𝗶𝗬𝗂's history hints that moral compromise was deeply embedded in its DNA. Founder 𝗥𝗜𝗖𝗛 was the son of a former Waffen-SS officer turned CIA asset, highlighting a lineage of flexible ethics in the service of power. Financial secrecy is not a victimless crime. It has helped prop up dictators, fund human rights violations, and silence accountability. The Panama Papers didn't just expose corruption, they showed how white-collar firms and clean offices can facilitate dark regimes. Dictatorships don't run on bullets alone. They run on balance sheets. The hand behind the curtain often wears a cufflink. Key takeaway 4. Putin's hidden billions, how a cellist became Russia's offshore banker, Panama Papers exposed. How does a classical musician end up at the center of a $2 billion offshore empire? That's the surreal story uncovered by the Panama Papers investigation, where journalists followed a complex money trail from concert halls to ski resorts, revealing a secret financial network with global implications. The name at the heart of it all? Sergei Roldygin, Putin's close friend and godfather to his daughter, whose resume lists cello performances, not billion-dollar banking deals. Through a network of 5 offshore shell companies with names like International Media Overseas and Sandalwood Continental, Roldygin funneled billions through Russia's most influential banks. Transactions were designed with almost comical opacity, millions paid for unspecified consulting, share deals conveniently backdated, and failure fees payouts for projects that never happened. In one stunning case, Roldygin's company acquired the rights to a $200 million loan for just $1, reaping $8 million annually, no risk, all reward. And behind the curtain? Rossiya Bank, informally dubbed Putin's bank, which operated the levers of this system. While official documents showed Swiss lawyers managing Roldygin's companies, bank employees in St. Petersburg held real control. After the US sanctioned Rossiya Bank in 2014 for its ties to Russia's Ukraine actions, President Putin personally ordered financial lifelines to protect it, cementing the institution's significance in state operations. The money flowed further, right to 𝗥𝗜𝗖𝗛 Ski Resort, a luxury retreat near St. Petersburg, known for hosting Putin's daughter's wedding. The resort's owner received $10 million in loans from Roldygin-linked firms, loans that were never repaid. The funds weren't isolated, they came from state-linked sources, with ties to companies like 𝗘𝗫𝗄 and 𝗦𝗘𝗐, whose vehicles are central to Russian military operations. Roldygin, who publicly claimed he had no wealth, stood as the face of this elaborate operation, offering a picture-perfect example of financial secrecy in Russia. So what does it say when a soft-spoken cellist becomes the custodian of billions? In a world where offshore finance blurs truth and power, the real players often sit far from boardrooms, masked by culture, prestige, and deniability. This isn't just about corruption, it's about how modern authoritarian regimes weaponize financial systems to quietly consolidate power. The real power doesn't shout, it whispers through shell companies. Financial secrecy is the last refuge of unaccountable power. Key takeaway 5. How the rich avoid taxes. Inside the secret world of offshore wealth, Panama Papers explained. Imagine living in a world where paying taxes is optional, not because you found a loophole, but because the entire system was built to exclude you. This isn't fiction. It's the financial reality for the world's ultra-wealthy, who've engineered a parallel universe of offshore tax havens, secrecy, and privilege. As most citizens file their taxes with precision, or dread, the super-rich glide through a world of shell companies, luxury loopholes, and zero accountability. According to economist Gabriel Zucman, nearly €5.9 trillion in global wealth, 8% of the world's total, is hidden in offshore accounts, with most of it untaxed. Firms like 𝗦𝗘𝗶𝗬𝗂, the now notorious Panamanian law firm, didn't just enable this, they industrialized it. Family offices, private banks, and legal consultants created bespoke structures designed to shield wealth behind multiple layers of ownership and jurisdiction. The cost to participate? A minimum of $30 million in investable assets, a system exclusive by design. But this isn't a niche game anymore. Over 100,000 individuals worldwide now qualify as ultra-high net worth, and many of them use these systems routinely. The Panama Papers revealed that over 50 billionaires from the Forbes list had active offshore structures with Mossack Fonseca, just one player in a vast marketplace. From ancient European nobility to modern tech moguls, the faces may differ, but the strategy is the same: conceal assets, dodge obligations, and consolidate power. So, what does it mean when one group can choose the laws they obey while the rest cannot? This isn't just about money, it's about democracy. As Oxfam highlights, the top 1% now control more wealth than the rest of humanity combined. That concentration isn't accidental, it's architected. When wealth is hidden, accountability disappears, warns 𝗥𝗚𝗏. And as the gap widens, equal treatment under the law, the cornerstone of democratic life, begins to erode. Can societies survive such a two-tiered system? If we want transparency, justice, and economic equity, we must confront this hidden architecture. It's time to shine a light on the dark corners of global finance. Let's keep this conversation going, and push for systems that serve everyone, not just the elite few. Democracy dies behind closed accounts. The more complex the structure, the simpler the intent: avoid responsibility. In the stillness of an ordinary evening, German journalist Bastian Obermeier received a simple yet world-altering message. Interested in data? That encrypted note sparked what would become one of the most explosive investigations in modern journalism, the Panama Papers. What began as a whisper from an anonymous whistleblower named John Doe soon grew into an international media collaboration that peeled back the layers of global corruption. With 11.5 million leaked documents and over 2.6 terabytes of data, this massive leak shattered the illusion of financial fairness and revealed a hidden world of offshore secrecy and tax evasion. At the heart of the story lies Mossack Fonseca, a quiet Panamanian law firm that facilitated the creation of hundreds of thousands of shell companies. These structures allowed powerful figures, from dictators to billionaires, to conceal their wealth and sidestep the laws that bind the rest of us. The revelations uncovered an elite parallel economy, one where money moved invisibly across borders, shielded by anonymous directors, bearer shares, and nominee shareholders. It wasn't just clever, it was engineered for deception. What truly shocked the world wasn't just the existence of this hidden economy, it was how deeply normalized and widely accepted it had become among the global elite. The investigation traced billions to familiar names: friends of Putin, family members of political leaders, global celebrities, and some of the world's wealthiest business people. It exposed how offshore tax havens and legal loopholes aren't bugs in the system, they're features exploited by those with the means to do so. Even more chilling was the connection between these financial structures and the world's most oppressive regimes. The book details how Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad's inner circle used Mossack Fonseca to circumvent international sanctions, funding their regime through front companies and false invoices. It showed how money laundering isn't just financial, it fuels war, repression, and human suffering on a global scale. These were not victimless crimes, they had consequences felt in refugee camps, collapsed economies, and communities left behind. And then there's the quiet cellist, Sergei Roldygin, Putin's close friend, who somehow moved over $2 billion through obscure offshore companies. The absurdity of it all laid bare the core truth: this wasn't about music, it was about power. Behind every anonymous shell company and backdated invoice stood a calculated strategy to shift wealth and control from public systems to private hands, away from accountability and into darkness. The book doesn't just chronicle corruption, it champions courage. Over 400 journalists from 80 countries worked tirelessly and often at great personal risk to bring these truths to light. Their work is a testament to the power of collaboration, integrity, and fearless journalism. And their findings sparked global outrage, resignations, protests, and new policies. Yet, the deeper message remains: the structures that enabled the Panama Papers scandal still largely exist, and the fight for transparency is far from over. The Panama Papers is a wake-up call. It's not just a story about hidden accounts and legal trickery, it's a mirror held up to our world. It asks us all, what kind of society do we want to build? One where the rules apply equally to all, or one where wealth buys exemption? Awareness is only the beginning. Real change starts when we turn outrage into action. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe to help spread its message. Knowledge is power, and together, we can shine a light into the shadows. And if no one told you lately, remember this: you are loved, you are worthy, and you are spectacularly capable of extraordinary things.